Lily's Lost Dance. Lily was a tempest of pure, unbridled joy. Their small apartment, a familiar chaos of strewn toys and Tom's perpetually unfolded laundry, served as her stage. There, she'd unleash her kinetic energy in dances, a riot of limbs and leaps, each movement a vibrant expression of her spirit. Sunlight, filtering through a grimy window, painted her hair with gold as she whirled, a tiny dervish lost in her own enchanted world. Tom, settled in the worn armchair, watched, a wistful smile playing on his lips. Her steps might have been clumsy, the rhythm often skewed, but in her eyes, she commanded the spotlight. "Again, Daddy, again," she'd shriek, her face glowing with exertion as Tom hoisted her, spinning her until she collapsed into a fit of helpless giggles. He'd catch her, breathless, inhaling the sweet scent of her hair. "You're destined for the stage, Lilybug," he'd murmur, already sensing her extraordinary soul. The shriek of tires still haunted Tom's sleep. One moment, Lily was chasing a runaway soccer ball toward the street, her joyous peals of laughter echoing. The next, a sickening crunch and the world tilted precariously. The ensuing days dissolved into a sterile fog of hospital smells, hushed whispers, and the insistent pulse of monitors. Tom recalled clutching Lily's small hand, the fragile bones feeling like delicate bird wings beneath his roughened fingers, begging a silent plea for a miracle he struggled to believe possible. The diagnosis arrived with clinical detachment, a surgeon's precise cut, spinal cord trauma, paralysis. The words dropped like stones, heavy and suffocating, draining all vitality from the room. Now, Lily resided in her wheelchair, her gaze fixed on the world outside. The same sunlight that once crowned her dancing now seemed to cruelly highlight her confinement. The playground below, once a source of endless wonder, now stood as a stark reminder of her stolen freedom. "Daddy?" Her voice was faint, barely audible. Tom knelt beside her, his heart aching at the downturn of her lips. "Yes, Lilybug?" She pointed a trembling finger toward a group of children absorbed in a game of hopscotch. "They're leaping." Tom struggled to find the right words, the comforting phrase that could heal her wounded spirit, but found only silence. He gently took her hand, offering a reassuring squeeze. "I long to dance," she confessed, her voice catching. Her lower lip quivered. "I crave the jumping, the spinning, the everything." Tom enfolded her in his arms, burying his face in her hair, a familiar gesture. But this time, the air was devoid of laughter, void of her boundless vitality. Only the soft sound of Lily's quiet tears, each drop a sliver of ice piercing his heart. He felt powerless, a feeling he loathed most. He was her guardian, her provider, her whole world. And he couldn't remedy this. Yet, as he embraced her, a spark of resolve flickered within. He refused to let this define her. He wouldn't allow her spirit to be extinguished. He would discover a way forward. He had to. Tom's promise. The combined aroma of pine and freshly cut wood permeated the air, sharply lit by a bare bulb swaying precariously above Tom's workspace. Decades of labor etched into his hands, now guided a piece of cherry, coaxing it into the gentle arc of a rocking horse, a promise to Lily, a beacon of hope he felt compelled to deliver. Each tap of the mallet, each careful sanding stroke was a defiant act against the rising tide of despair. The rhythmic pulse of his work masked, but couldn't quite drown out the echo of the doctor's grim prognosis, marginal progress at best. A glance towards the calendar by the door revealed a stark landscape of crossed-out days, each marking another sterile appointment, another forced smile masking a deepening sense of futility. He wiped sweat from his temple, the fine sawdust clinging like a second skin. The rocking horse needed finishing. He needed income. The mounting bills felt like a physical weight, a stark reminder of his powerlessness. The next morning, antiseptic fumes assaulted Tom's senses. Lily, perched on the high examination table, legs swinging nervously, offered a brave, if strained, smile. Dr. Armitage, radiating a clinical detachment as chilling as his stethoscope, adjusted his spectacles and gave a weary sigh. "The physiotherapy. It's yielding less progress than we'd anticipated. We can persist, naturally, but frankly, Mr. Baker, the outlook is discouraging." Tom's jaw clenched. There has to be something else. A different treatment, a specialist with more experience. Armitage's headshake felt like a blow. "We are exhausting every available option." Later, back in their cramped apartment, Lily sat silently by the rain-streaked window, her gaze lost in the blur of the downpour. Tom knelt beside her, gently holding her hand. He saw her disappointment reflected in her eyes, a depth of sorrow no child should carry. "Hey," he murmured, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "Don't you fret, Lilybug. We're not surrendering. Not now, not ever." "But the doctor," she whispered, her voice fragile. He gathered her close, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "Doctors don't possess all the answers, my love. I promise you I will discover a solution. I will help you run and play again. I swear it. His words hung in the air, a sacred vow whispered in the face of daunting odds. He would scale mountains for her. He would search the globe. He would do whatever was necessary. He had to. A glimmer of hope in the park. The park buzzed with the chaotic energy of a late summer afternoon. Children shrieked with laughter as they chased pigeons, their tiny legs pumping furiously across the paved paths. Lily watched them, her expression a wistful mix of longing and acceptance. Tom squeezed her hand. He knew what she was thinking. He always did. "Want an ice cream?" he asked, trying to lighten the mood. Lily nodded, a small smile gracing her lips. As Tom headed towards the ice cream vendor, Lily continued to observe the children. A little girl with bright red boots tripped and fell, scraping her knee. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly scrambled back up, dusting herself off with determined little hands. Lily's gaze lingered on her, a silent understanding passing between them. Suddenly, a sleek, black sedan pulled up near the park's entrance. A distinguished-looking man with silver hair emerged, followed by a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. It was Mr. Sterling and Ms. Ainsworth. Mr. Sterling looked even more somber than Tom remembered. Mr. Sterling paused, his gaze sweeping over the scene before him. A mixture of amusement and profound sadness etched on his face. He noticed Lily sitting quietly on the bench. His steps faltered, his eyes seeming to recognize her. "Mr. Sterling, would you like to sit for a moment?" Ms. Ainsworth asked gently, guiding him towards a bench a few feet away from Lily. Tom returned with 2 ice cream cones, 1 vanilla and 1 strawberry. He handed the strawberry to Lily, his eyes meeting hers in a silent question. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that chased away the shadows in her eyes. He sat next to her, savoring the sweet coolness of the vanilla ice cream. Mr. Sterling sat heavily on the bench, his gaze fixed on the children playing. "They're so carefree," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Ms. Ainsworth sighed softly. "They haven't learned about the world yet, Mr. Sterling?" "No, they haven't," he agreed. He turned to Ms. Ainsworth, lowering his voice slightly, seemingly unaware that Tom was within earshot. "The clinic called again. They have a new experimental treatment, but the cost, it's astronomical." Even with the foundation, Ms. Ainsworth placed a comforting hand on his arm. "We'll find a way, Mr. Sterling. We always do." Tom's ears perked up. Experimental treatments? Astronomical costs? He glanced at Lily, who was engrossed in watching a squirrel scamper up a tree. He knew he shouldn't eavesdrop, but the desperation in Mr. Sterling's voice, the mention of medical treatments, it sparked a flicker of something within him. A glimmer of hope, perhaps in the most unexpected of places. He leaned in slightly, pretending to adjust his shoe, and listened more intently. An unexpected offer. Tom stood just outside the glass doors of Sterling Enterprises, the polished chrome reflecting his anxious face back at him. His palms were slick, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He smoothed down his worn jacket, a futile attempt to appear presentable. He'd rehearsed what he wanted to say 100 times, but now, facing the imposing building, the words seemed to evaporate. Taking a deep breath, he pushed through the doors. The cool, hushed atmosphere inside was a stark contrast to the bustling city outside. He approached the reception desk, where a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper haircut looked up at him expectantly. "I'd like to see Mr. Sterling," Tom mumbled, his voice barely audible. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. "No, but it's important." He hesitated, unsure how to explain. "It's about his daughter." The woman's expression softened slightly. "I'll see if he's available." "What is your name?" "Tom Baker." She typed something into her computer, then spoke into a phone. After a brief exchange, she looked back at Tom. "Mr. Sterling will see you. Ms. Ainsworth will escort you to his office." Tom followed Ms. Ainsworth, a woman with a kind face and a no-nonsense demeanor, through a maze of hallways to a large corner office. The room was sparsely furnished, dominated by a massive desk and a panoramic view of the city. Mr. Sterling sat behind the desk, his face etched with a weariness that seemed to settle into the very expensive leather of his chair. "Mr. Baker," Mr. Sterling said, his voice flat. "Please have a seat." Tom sat, perched on the edge of the chair. He swallowed hard. "Mr. Sterling, I know you don't know me, but I need to tell you something. It's about my daughter, Lily." He explained about the accident, the doctor's grim prognosis, Lily's unwavering spirit, and his own desperate search for a way to help her. He He spoke with a raw honesty, his voice cracking with emotion as he described Lily's determination to walk again. Mr. Sterling listened intently, his gaze fixed on Tom, his expression unreadable. Miss Ainsworth stood silently by the door, her presence a quiet reassurance. When Tom finished, a heavy silence filled the room. Mr. Sterling steepled his fingers, his eyes narrowed as if he were assessing Tom. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "Why are you telling me this, Mr. Baker?" Tom met his gaze, his own filled with a desperate plea. "Because I know what it's like to lose a child, or to face the possibility of it. And I'm out of options. I've heard of experimental treatments, specialists, but they're so far out of reach." Mr. Sterling was silent for a long moment, the only sound the faint hum of the city outside. Then he leaned forward, his eyes suddenly sharp. "Tell me the names of these doctors. Tell me everything." He paused, his voice gaining strength. "I will pay for it, Mr. Baker. Every specialist, every treatment, whatever it takes." Tom stared at him, stunned. You would do that? But why?" A flicker of something, pain, perhaps, or regret, crossed Mr. Sterling's face. "Because," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "maybe, just maybe, I can do something good with the money I have. Maybe I can help another father not lose his child." Disappointment and despair. The MRI machine emitted a high-pitched whine that bored into Lily's skull. Eyes squeezed shut, she conjured sun-drenched fields, clutching the image as the contraption rattled and thumped around her. Outside the glass, Tom's face was etched with anxiety. This month alone, they'd seen 3 specialists, endured 3 sets of grueling tests, weathered 3 crests of optimism, each followed by a more devastating fall. Dr. Albright, a vision of starched authority, delivered the verdict with practiced sympathy. "The scans present ambiguities, Mr. Baker. There's activity, yet nothing conclusive. Further investigation will be necessary." A wave of queasiness washed over Tom. More tests meant more bills he couldn't manage. More fleeting glimmers of hope destined to be extinguished. Lily observed him from her wheelchair as they exited the sterile clinic. His mouth was a tight line, his shoulders slumped with the weight of it all. Her small hand found his, her fingers offering a fragile reassurance. "It's all right, Dad." But the truth hung unspoken between them. The endless consultations, the invasive procedures, the hushed conversations. They were taking their pound of flesh. The once effervescent Lily, bubbling with stories, was becoming withdrawn, her youthful spark fading. Back at Sterling Manor, Eleanor brought a silent offering of tea and biscuits, her usual balm. Mr. Sterling, however, remained a phantom in his own grand estate. Tom battled a surge of resentment, quickly stifled. He'd entered into an agreement. He couldn't expect immediate results. One afternoon, Lily sat mesmerized by the rain lashing against the window panes. Tom found her lost in the storm's fury. "Penny for your thoughts, sweetie?" She didn't turn. "Remember splashing in puddles, Dad? Before all of this?" Tom's chest constricted. He recalled her joyous peals of laughter, the bright glint in her eyes as she navigated the muddy terrain. Now those eyes were shadowed with weary acceptance. "We'll do it again, Lilybug," he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll do it again soon." Finally she pivoted, her gaze locking with his. "No, we won't, Dad." The words fell flat, robbed of inflection. "It's fine. I'm just tired." Later that night, Tom fixated on the contract with Sterling. The audacious promise blazed before him: "I can restore your daughter's ability to walk." A wave of anger surged, scalding and bitter. Was it all a charade? An elaborate, heartless deception? He found Eleanor tending to the silverware in the formal dining room, polishing each piece with meticulous care. "Mr. Sterling, he keeps to himself these days," he observed, struggling to maintain a neutral tone. Eleanor paused, her eyes unwavering. "Mr. Sterling is a reserved individual, Mr. Baker. His grief manifests in solitude." "Grief?" Tom scoffed inwardly. "What about Lily? Doesn't he recognize the impact this is having on her?" Eleanor sighed, placing the gleaming silver on the mahogany table. "Mr. Sterling is deeply committed to Lily's well-being, Mr. Baker. More so than you realize." Tom longed to believe her, but hopelessness was a suffocating shroud, dimming his faith. He was losing Lily, sliver by sliver, and he felt utterly powerless to prevent it. A carpenter's dream. Dust motes pirouette in the weak sunlight slicing through the garage's grimy panes. Tom stood frozen, the mingled aroma of sawdust and linseed oil a bittersweet echo of happier times. How long had it been since he'd held these tools? He couldn't bear to calculate. A lifetime measured in missed opportunities, not carved wood. His fingers, roughened by keyboard keys instead of grain, traced the cold, honed edge of a chisel. He recalled the satisfying give of timber beneath his touch, the pure joy of creation. Lily had adored watching him, her small hands reaching for the wood curls, bright as spun gold. A searing wave of grief crashed over him, stealing his breath. He balled his hands into fists, battling the tears that threatened to drown him. Not now. Lily needed him strong. His gaze drifted over the cluttered workbench, a landscape of abandoned hopes and orphaned hardware. A birdhouse skeletal and incomplete, a teetering side table, a toy train missing its cheer. Each object a monument to a paused life, a life he yearned to resurrect. Then an idea as fragile as a hatchling fluttered to life in his thoughts. Audacious, perhaps even reckless, but insistent. The medical professionals had offered their opinions, their limitations, their bleak perspectives. But they didn't know Lily's spirit nor his resolve. He snatched up a pad and pencil, the familiar weight grounding him. He began to sketch, hesitant lines blooming into bolder strokes as the concept solidified. A walking frame, yet unlike anything he'd witnessed in the sterile hospital corridors. Something beautiful, something robust, something utterly personal. He imagined featherlight yet resilient wood, meticulously shaped and fitted, offering unwavering support. Intricate carvings danced in his mind, butterflies poised for flight, or perhaps diminutive, stylized dragons, Lily's beloved mythical creatures. It wouldn't just be a medical apparatus, it would be a testament to his devotion, an emblem of enduring hope. Hours dissolved unnoticed. The sun bled below the horizon, painting long shadows across the garage floor. A chill seeped into the air, yet Tom remained oblivious. He was lost in the design, his mind alight, his hands aching to begin. He glanced down at the sketches strewn across the bench, each an incremental step toward the final form. Doubt still whispered, insidious voices questioning his sanity. Could he truly accomplish this? Was he chasing a phantom? He focused on the snapshot of Lily he carried, her sparkling eyes alight with mischief and joy. He recalled her infectious laughter, her indomitable will. And he knew, with a conviction that resonated through him, that he had to try. He would craft this device. He would infuse every mortise, every curve, every detail with his heart and soul. He would use his hands to conjure something the doctors, with their vast knowledge and impressive technology, had written off as impossible. He would help Lily walk again, building hope one piece at a time. The workshop hummed, a frantic symphony of whirring drill bits and the rasp of sandpaper against metal. Sawdust danced in the single shaft of sunlight piercing the grimy window, illuminating Tom's hunched figure. He hadn't slept properly in days, fueled only by lukewarm coffee and a desperate hope that clawed at his insides. Each joint ached, each muscle screamed, but he ignored them. This wasn't about him. The walking frame was taking shape, albeit slowly. He'd poured every spare cent into the project, scouring salvage yards for lightweight aluminum and durable, adaptable joints. He'd even sold his prized vintage motorcycle, a sacrifice that still stung, but one he'd make 1,000 times over for Lily. He wrestled with the knee supports. The angle was crucial, too much pressure and it would be agonizing for Lily, too little and it wouldn't provide the necessary stability. He'd spent hours poring over medical diagrams, his brow furrowed in concentration, muttering about biomechanics and fulcrums. He'd even called a physical therapist, pretending to be a student working on a theoretical design project, but the woman had quickly grown suspicious of his vaguely phrased questions. Frustration mounted. He threw the wrench onto the workbench, the clang echoing in the small space. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair, leaving a streak of grease across his forehead. He couldn't get it right. The measurements were perfect, the materials sound, but the damn thing just wouldn't cooperate. He felt a familiar wave of despair wash over him, threatening to pull him under. He closed his eyes, picturing Lily's face, her bright, intelligent eyes, the way she stubbornly refused to let her condition define her. He remembered her drawing, a stick figure of herself running through a field of sunflowers. That image was enough. He couldn't fail her. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the discarded wrench. He needed a different approach. He studied the knee support again, his gaze lingering on the point where the two pieces of aluminum met. An idea sparked. He rummaged through his toolbox, finally finding a small, adjustable hinge he'd salvaged from an old washing machine. It wasn't pretty, but it might just work. With renewed determination, he began to modify the design, carefully grinding down the hinge to fit, his movements precise and deliberate. The air filled with the acrid smell of burning metal, but he didn't stop until the hinge was securely in place. He adjusted the tension, testing the movement with his own leg. It felt right. He stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. The knee support now had a smooth, natural range of motion. It wasn't perfect, but it was a significant improvement. A surge of hope coursed through him, pushing back the fatigue and doubt. He was one step closer. One piece at a time, he was building more than just a walking frame. He was building hope. Lily's first steps. Lily traced the outline of the box with a hesitant finger. It was large, cumbersome, dominating a corner of the small living room. "What is it, Dad?" she asked, her voice a breath. Tom knelt beside her, his hand covering hers. "A surprise. A helper." He ripped open the cardboard, the sound loud in the quiet space, and pulled out the gleaming chrome frame. It stood on 4 legs, a padded bar running across the top. A walking frame. Lily's eyes widened, then narrowed. I don't know if I can." A tremor ran through her hand, the one still resting beneath Tom's. "We won't know until we try, right?" He assembled it quickly, the click of the metal joints strangely comforting. When it was ready, he positioned it in front of her wheelchair. "Ready?" She bit her lip, her gaze fixed on the frame. It looked daunting, like a metal cage holding her captive. But it also represented something else. Freedom. Hope. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tom helped her stand, his strong arms supporting her as she transferred her weight. Her legs wobbled, unfamiliar with the pressure. He guided her hands to the padded bar. Her fingers tightened around it, her knuckles white. "Just breathe, Lilybug. I'm right here." The metal was cold against her palms. She took a shaky breath, then another. "I'm scared, Dad." "I know. But you're also brave. The bravest person I know." She looked at him, really looked at him. The worry etched on his face, the unwavering belief in his eyes. It gave her strength. A sliver of courage bloomed in her chest. "Okay," she said again, firmer this time. Slowly, cautiously, she lifted one foot. It felt heavy, alien. She placed it a few inches forward, then shifted her weight. A jolt of pain shot up her leg, but she clenched her jaw and held on. Tom's hand was a steadying presence on her back. "That's it," he murmured. "One step. You did it." She lifted the other foot. Another searing pain, another wobble. But she kept going. One step, then another. The frame rattled slightly on the worn carpet. The air in the room seemed thick, charged with anticipation. 5 steps. 10. Her muscles screamed in protest. Sweat beaded on her forehead. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Not now. 15 steps. She looked up, her eyes meeting Tom's. They were shining, filled with unshed tears. I'm doing it," she gasped, her voice thick with emotion. 20 steps. She was halfway across the room. The finish line, the worn armchair by the window, seemed miles away. But she kept her eyes fixed on it, her hands gripping the frame, her legs burning with effort. With a final surge of determination, she reached it. She collapsed into the chair, her body trembling, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Tom knelt in front of her, his hands cupping her face. "You did it, Lily. You really did it." She looked at him, her eyes sparkling with tears. A smile stretched across her face, a genuine, triumphant smile. "I walked, Dad." Dancing in the sun. The walker, a gleaming steel skeleton, separated Lily from the sunlit patch on the time-worn Persian carpet. Tom faced their daily ritual with a blend of anticipation and trepidation, a feeling amplified this morning. He noted the shiver in her hands clasping the cool bars, the subtle dampness on her forehead. "Just a little further, Lilybug," he encouraged, his voice carefully masking his worry. "You're doing wonderfully." She shuffled forward, each small movement a victory, her features resolute. He knew how desperately she craved the direct warmth of the sun, unmediated by glass. From the threshold, unnoticed, Mr. Sterling stood watching, Ms. Ainsworth a silent, observant presence beside him. He'd made it a habit to be present, a spectral observer of Lily's therapy, maintaining his distance. But Ms. Ainsworth had noticed a subtle softening in his expression, an unconscious mirroring of Lily's efforts, as if mentally urging her legs to cooperate. Lily reached the rug's edge, basking in the sun's golden embrace. She paused, her breath coming in ragged bursts, eyes tightly closed. Then, a small, triumphant grin appeared. "Daddy," she announced, her voice surprisingly firm, "I want to try it." Tom's heart hammered against his ribs. "Try what, sweetie?" "Without," she breathed, gesturing toward the walker. He faltered, gripped by fear's sharp talons. What if she stumbled? What if this dashed her fragile hopes? Yet, in her gaze, he saw an unyielding determination echoing his own yearning. "Okay, Lilybug," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Just for a moment. I'll be right here." He knelt, hands poised just beneath her arms, ready to steady her. Lily inhaled deeply and let go of the frame. For a split second, she faltered, her body a fragile pendulum. Then she grounded one foot, followed by the other. She stood, unassisted, drenched in sunlight. A soft exclamation escaped Mr. Sterling's throat. Uncontrolled tears coursed down his cheeks. Miss Ainsworth placed a reassuring hand on his arm, her own eyes glistening. Lily giggled, the sound like tinkling bells. "I'm dancing in the sun, Daddy." She took another step, then another, her gait unsteady yet purposeful. Tom, his vision swimming with tears, laughed, a sound both broken and joyful. He reached out and enveloped her in a hug, burying his face in her hair's soft texture. Mr. Sterling approached, his face stained with tears, but his eyes radiating a newfound warmth. He knelt beside them, gently touching Lily's arm. "You are extraordinary, Lily," he said, his voice rough with feeling. "Truly extraordinary." Lily smiled at him, her eyes bright. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling." And in that sun-dappled space, filled with shared emotion, an improbable connection took root.